Hello and welcome to my November wrap up. This is a slightly different setup. I'm still in Cleveland, so you guys get to see my stepdad's and mom's bookshelves. They are absolutely stunning, and I can actually stand in front of them instead of sitting on the floor. So it's great. I think only read 6 things in the month of November, but 2 of them were over 1,000 pages, and I loved a lot of what I read, so I'm considering it a win, but per usual, I'll put it in like 2 categories, novellas and novels, because that's about how it broke down. I read a few novellas and I read a few epic fantasy novels, and let's just get into it. To start off with, let's start with the Binti trilogy, which I just finished. I do have a review for the whole trilogy if you want all of my thoughts, but let's first get into Binti Home, which is the second book in the Binti trilogy. This is a story about Binti, who is a Himba on Earth who leaves to go to Umza Uni. She's the first of her people to do so, and that is quite a big deal. And in this story, we are following Binti after she has to deal with the trauma that occurs in the story of the first Binti book. And it's my favorite story in the entire trilogy. It's very introspective. You really get to watch her struggle with her PTSD and her anxiety attacks, and the world really opens up in this novella. It's much longer than Binti. You get to travel back to Earth and learn more about the Himba and other cultures that exist on Earth in this far-off future sci-fi. And it's my favorite, and it ends on quite a cliffhanger. So just, I guess, know that going in. I definitely would recommend having the third Binti book on hand for when you finish Binti Home, but I really liked it. And like I said in my review for all the Binti books, if you are someone who just loves imaginative science fiction that almost feels like magic with really, like, it focuses on themes and what it means to be a person and, balancing individuality and tradition, I would look into this trilogy. So although I really loved Binti Home, I had very mixed feelings about Binti the Night Masquerade, the third installment in this trilogy. It really has a lot more world building. It really expands the scope. I loved the sci-fi elements. I loved the themes. I didn't like the plot, and that's been a thing I've not loved for all 3 books, and I talk about it in that review, but I did not like how it ended. I did not like certain plot devices or tropes that were used, and I can't talk about them without spoiling it. And I really, really disliked that there was this one kind of mysterious item that we've been having this all trilogy, and the payoff was just kind of not there for me. That said, I am still considering purchasing the bind-up. Like, I do want to reread it because I do think I would gain more on a reread in terms of the world building and the sci-fi and the themes, and just going in knowing, like, not expecting so much from certain elements that have been introduced to me. So overall, I really did like the entire trilogy, but the last book is by far my least favorite, and that's why it got a 3-star from me. The next novella I'll talk about is Dawnshard, which I also have a review for. This is the novella between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, and I really, really liked it. I really liked it because of the Cosmere implications. So the Cosmere is Sanderson's larger universe for his adult fantasy works primarily. I have a video on how to read the Cosmere. I have a video ranking my Cosmere books. If you have any questions about the Cosmere, I will gladly talk about it. But Dawnshard is amazing, and it follows some of my favorite characters and plot elements of the Stormlight series. You get to go back to an island we briefly visit in an interlude that was always interesting to me, and it follows Rhysand the trader, who I really love. So overall, it was great for me. It was a great reading experience, and I now have read Rhythm of War and Dawnshard, and I still think you should read it first. Is it required? No, Sanderson's very good at not making there be required reading, but there is an interlude in Rhythm of War that I think makes a lot more sense if you've read Dawnshard, and they mention the trip to Aimia, I think is what the island's called, frequently in part 1. So if you want to know the backstory to those moments, although they aren't huge things in the plot, you're probably reading the Stormlight Archives because you love the world building and the Cosmere, and because you love all the details. Otherwise, you're reading an 1,000-page book for the wrong reason, because there just are lots of details. And I guess that'll switch us in to our novels. Let's talk about the novels I read this month, because like I said, I only read 3. It's pretty small for me, but I did love 2 of them, and I'm glad I read the others. So let's start with Rhythm of War, since I was already talking about that. I have spoiler vlogs for the entire book out now. So I have parts 1 and 2, part 3, and 4 and 5, and I will link that in a playlist up there. It's all spoiler, and it is amazing for me. It's everything I want from a Stormlight Archive book. It has amazing world building. It has my favorite characters doing awesome stuff all the time. The plot, things happen. So many things happen. I think it's the best paced book of all four. I don't know if it beats out Words of Radiance. I'm too fresh. I just finished it 2 days ago, but I think I had the most fun reading it the entire way through. Now, is its ending as good for me as Words of Radiance? I don't know, but I really liked it. And so if you like the Stormlight Archives, I think you will probably mostly like it, at least if you read it for the reasons I do. I like all of the characters. I think my least favorite perspective to read from is Dalinar's, which I know is probably a hot take, but he's just not my favorite character perspective to read from. I do like his character, and he has the least screen time here. And Navani gets more screen time, and it's great. I just really like that, and I geeked out so much about the world building stuff in my vlogs, and I was like theorizing. It was great. I loved making those. They were a lot of fun. I really liked the book. 5-star. It was an obvious 5-star. I'm sure no one was shocked. Let's talk about the other two. I know it's been on my TBRs since like August, but I read Shorefall. This was a solid 4-star. I think that Robert Jackson Bennett for me is like my pleasure read fantasy author. He is very good at taking things from like action movies or thriller movies or mysteries, like those elements, putting them with fantasy elements into a novel, and I can consume them in like 2 to 3 days so quick. So for me, he's like that perfect pleasure read, and Shorefall is no exception. This follows Foundryside, the first book in the Founders trilogy, and we are picking up, I want to say 3 years after the last one. It might be 10. And we're following our group of people after that. And I love our team. I love the chemistry of these characters together. I love the problems they have to solve. I'm really stressed out again for the characters. Something happens to a character I quite like. But I know, I just think it's really fun. I think they're just really fun, consumable fantasy, and they're really great. I do think this one, compared to all of them, was more thematically fumbly, I guess. I don't know if that's even the right phrasing, but it was not nuanced in the theming, which I normally don't care. But I think to this point, it was so blatant, and it was so through the villain in a very like, mwahaha, I'm the villain and I'm doing this because capitalism is bad. Which, like, yes, I agree. Capitalism is not ideal for the common man, but it just kind of felt a little bit hammered in, and I don't love that. If you're gonna have a theme, I'd rather it be more nuanced than that, especially because this was just a fun kind of good fantasy action thing. So that was like probably the thing that brought it down from 5 to 4 stars, but still a great time. And the last one I'll talk about is The Shadow Rising, the 4th Wheel of Time book. Oh my god, was it so long. It was such a long book. I know I say that after just finishing Rhythm of War, which is much longer, objectively. But it took me so long to read The Shadow Rising. I think it took me longer to read The Shadow Rising than it took me to read Rhythm of War, for sure, now that I'm thinking about it. And there are things I really liked. I really liked the history and the backstory we got from certain parts of the world. I did like the ending. The ending was actually my favorite ending of all Wheel of Time books. I didn't like most of the journey, and I don't know why. It's really weird. Sometimes there are moments where I can't put the book down and I'm like very engrossed. I can't imagine why this would never work for me. I must have been asleep when I read the other section, right? Like I feel like I'm crazy. And then I read another section while just being awake, and I'm kind of taken out of it. I'm not as into it. It's very weird. I think part of it's a writing style problem when he goes into those sections. I think another part of it is like, again, what I was mentioning in the previous book, when this author has a theme, he wants me to know the theme. And it's very annoying because he's a very repetitive author, as people know, and it's repetitive, especially when it's a theme I don't even agree with. It's an outdated 90s theme about gender, and like, it's not even a bad theme, it's not a bad moral, whatever, but it's so repetitive and it was so annoying. And I don't know, it kind of also made me feel like I'm not getting good character relationships. I'm just getting characters that interact, but I don't get to actually see them develop. They just develop off page. And I'm like, we're spending so many pages doing things. Why don't you give me what I want in the story? So I don't know. I'm going to keep reading for sure books 5 and 6, especially since I am enjoying buddy reading it with some friends. Like that has made it fun, even if I am struggling. But after that, I might switch to heavily skimming or audiobook only for the slog, because I do want to get to the end. I want to get to the books that Sanderson's written. I want to see what I think of the whole story. At the end of the day, if I do just hit a point in this series where I'm like, I can't, this is just too much work, I'm not enjoying myself at all, I'll stop. But I am enjoying myself. Like, a 3-star is not a bad rating. I just see lots of flaws in my enjoyment. Also, that cat was my mom's, Iris's. She just said hi. But yeah, so those were the books I read this month. Like I said, not as many as normal, but honestly, I have been waiting to read Rhythm of War for 3 years, and I was not gonna rush it for BookTube. I get paid $0, so I wasn't doing that, and I'm so glad I just took my time with it, and it was really fun. So what was your favorite read in November? What are you looking forward to finish out the end of the year with? And if you made it this far, put a Christmas tree in the description below in honor of my shirt, and my Christmas tree is actually right next to me. You can't see it. And with that, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.